Well, good afternoon, everyone. Today, we're fortunate to be able to talk to Norma Heiss, who has a kind of a story about a miracle, about how she came back overcame great difficulties to become a leader in the field of public education concerning solar eclipses and other scientific phenomena. She's going to tell us her story, and then we'll have a dialogue afterwards in which I'll ask her some questions and we'll learn a bit more. Very happy to have you with us today. Let's hear what you've got to say.
Thank you, David. I will share a little bit of my story of the greatest miracle that God made in my life. And it's all about my human side. It's all about my human overcoming of a difficult situation, which is not 100%, but it's in process. And uh, I in 2008, I visited NASA as an intern. Um, we are developing a website in addition to the podcasts. The website's not ready yet, it's under construction. But on the website, I tell the story in more details, but I'll try to share the most important thing here about my trajectory. And in 2008, I visited NASA Goddard as an intern from the International Space University in France, and I developed the most important thing that I developed was research on eclipses through the centuries, eclipses in history, basically. So it's been around 33 stories on eclipses and history, and there were stories involving Columbus, Einstein, the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and many other interesting things, solar and lunar eclipses. And after that, I came back to Brazil and continued my work. I was a federal civil servant, and in 2013, I developed schizophrenia, which is a devastating illness, mental illness. And I had 4 years of delirium and hallucinations. So, delirium are a mental idea in which you believe other people say to you it's not true, but you don't listen to other people because I also had hallucination, which was physical sensations related to the content of the delirium. So, for example, I had a delirium that I was going to hell, and this was my main delirium at the time. And I had physical sensations associated to that, such as fire, some things like that. And I could feel in my body those things. And um, after that, I had a delirium related to aliens. So I believed I was a powerful alien. And this was a short delirium and shortest. And I had been to psychiatric hospitals twice. For the first time, it was kind of 15 days, and the second time was also around 13 days. And I had a psychotic crisis, which was I turned things from the window, such as two computers, jewelry, and some other stuff. And so it was a crisis, a difficult crisis, and I had no memories of what happened at those moments. And after that, I started taking an injection, which I take until today. Um, and this injection inhibited um delirium and hallucinations, but it brought other symptoms, which was they call the negative schizophrenia symptoms, which are a bad feeling in the entire body. So I had a horrible, terrible feeling in the entire body, which made me feel very bad, and it was difficult for me to get out of bed to go places with that bad feeling. And I had no pleasure in daily activities. And I told my father that the only things that brought me pleasure was drinking cappuccino, which I still like, and talking to my father. So it was the two pleasant activities that I had at the time, and nothing else brought me pleasure or well-being. And I had aversion to shower, which showering was a difficult activity for me because I felt bad, such as the bad feeling that I had in the body. So I didn't like to shower, so that's why I showered every 3 or 4 days. And I had a woman at my workplace, a hairdresser, to wash my hair and to take care of my hair because it was difficult to me to do these activities myself. Uh, and and then in 2019, I came back to Curitiba because I worked in Brasilia, the Brazilian capital, Brasilia, and I came back to South Brazil, my capital city, my hometown is Curitiba. Then I returned to my father's house. My father was ill. His wife had left him and had recently left him, and I came take care of my father. Then I spent almost 3 years taking care of my father, and it was a miracle because the negative symptoms disappeared. So I believe it was the effect of the medicine, and then thank God the effects of the medicine ended. It was not a coincidence that I came to take care of my father. I believe it's kind of a God's reward for the good thing that I was doing because we know that some people don't care about parents, and I suffered a lot thinking that my father could eventually go to a house for the elderly. He was so fragile. He was he had a heart problem, and he was restricted to bed and wheelchair, and so his moving was very restricted, and he was weak, and I didn't want him to suffer because I know that in such places people don't give enough attention to the elderly people, and especially the people who are in need, who are in greatest need, such as my dad was. And then I I worried a lot about my dad could go to the house for the elderly, but thank God, God didn't allow my father to go to such a place, and I had, thank God, enough money to take care of him until the end of his life. And then for 15 years, I couldn't get back to NASA, and it was my great dream, was the greatest dream of my life to get back to NASA. And I didn't see any possibilities for that because the people I talked to, um, they didn't show me any hope. And then it was when miraculously I got to know my today's partner, David Sybeck, and he works at NASA Gather, and I presented to him my podcast project about eclipses in history, and we started talking about that project, and he liked the project, and we started building the podcast that you've seen, this three initial episodes that we launched. And afterwards we started also constructing a website which will launch a little bit later. um, and so the idea was to present eclipses and eclipses in history. So how different eclipses in the course of history, such as the crucifixion of Jesus Christ eclipses, Columbus eclipses, how these incredible things, incredible facts affected this phenomenon, the eclipses affected, was correlated to such happenings, to such facts, the trip of Columbus, the crucifixion of Jesus, and so how all these facts connect. There you saw on our latest episode about Benjamin Banneker, this brilliant black scientist. So uh, you see how the eclipses influenced many facts and important people around the world, not only in the United States but around the world. And so David liked the idea of the podcast project. We are conducting this project, and it was the greatest miracle of my life. And I I hope that one day I'll have salvation. I'll go to heaven, and this will be the most incredible thing of my life. But in this life, in our earthly place now, in our world, so getting back to NASA with schizophrenia is the greatest happening of my life. I owe this to God in first place, and to David's, my earthly angel, after God, because God orchestrated everything to put David on my pathway. And so the message that I leave is that any miracle can be reached. It doesn't matter if you have an illness. It doesn't have a, it doesn't matter whatever difficulty you may have. That if you pray, if you have faith in God, and if you work hard, and if you never give up, so any miracle can happen. God can make any miracle, because he had done many miracles in the past, such as the Bible mentions, that turning water into wine, and opening an ocean, a sea, and many other miracles that the Bible cites. And he keeps on doing miracles such as he has done in my life. And on my website, I'll publish many NASA pictures that I took during my 2023 visits, and possibly I'll launch after an episode discussing and talking about my latest NASA visit here in this channel too. So now I'll open so that David can ask me a few questions.
Okay. Yep. Thank you for that, Norma. Um, I think it's a wonderful thing that you can speak honestly and openly about the problems you faced, honestly and openly about how difficult they were to overcome. And I think it's likely to be inspiring for others who also face challenges. All of us face challenges in our lives. But if we have faith and determination, we can overcome those challenges and succeed in ways that bring us great enjoyment, but in particular, in your case, succeed in ways that help others, because I think central to your activities is providing information that will inspire students, not just students, but other people to do their own studies, to think about eclipses, to think about the arts, the science of eclipse, and to become engaged with the world around them. So, for those who are listening, I'd like to go back and see where the sources of your strength came from. First of all, how is it that you are interested in eclipses? Are you interested in all kinds of science or especially astronomy? And how did you become interested in astronomy and eclipses?
Well, actually, I started enjoying liking astronomy since early age. I was sort of 5 or 6 years old. I got interested. For example, I want to see the comet Halley, and I wanted to read my father's books related to which had contents on astronomy, and I
Mhm,
wanted to go to libraries that that had books about astronomy.
mhm,
And today I'm interested in eclipses in history, because it's so interesting to see how they impact humanity, and so many important figures in our history, and how several accomplishments, for example, wars that were interrupted because of solar or lunar eclipses.
mhm,
So it's something very impacting for everyone.
mhm, mhm. So, Norma, would you say that your parents or your school encouraged you to take an interest in science or discouraged you? Sometimes in this country, women are discouraged from taking an interest in science. In my country, they're told science is for men, other things are for women. Did school encourage or discourage you? Did your parents encourage you? Did they give you a telescope or something to look at the sky with?
Yeah, so the school neither encouraged nor discouraged, so it was neutral. But it was my parents who encouraged me. Uh, they didn't say, Norma, you have to like astronomy. Not. It was my interest, but
Mhm,
as 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 long as they learned about my interest, they started encouraging me. For example, I went to a place with computers because at that time people didn't have computers at home. Then I went to a place here with computers to go to NASA websites, even without knowing English. Then my father put me in an English school because he knew that for sciences, English is important. My
mhm,
father was a very intelligent man, such as my mother, and my father and my mother they gave me two telescopes, one with 10 with which increases 10 times, and
mhm,
another with 20 times increase. So I still have the second telescope with the 20 times increase. I still have this
mhm,
telescope,
mhm,
and I also went to planetarium. My parents allowed me to go to planetarium to I founded a small club for teenagers in my neighborhood so that we discussed astronomy topics, and we also did sky observation in the night sometimes.
So we can say you had a strong interest when you were young and you acted on that interest. You pursued it. You met people and led people who had similar interests. And so you were engaged. Um, then you worked and you had a job, but I guess you maintained your interest in science. Was that part of your job to deal with science in Brazil, or was that simply something on the side that was a hobby when you had your job in Brasilia?
Well, I kept my studies on
Hmm.
astronomy, etc. But I also could associate some things. For
Hmm.
example, there were some activities, some courses, a
Hmm.
website that I produced, and presentations related to astronomy, which I could
Hmm.
develop could develop associated to my work as work
Hmm.
activities.
Hmm.
It was not most of the time was not the main job, but it was
Hmm.
a side
Okay.
activity.
So you were able to combine your interest with work in some cases and sometimes and keep
Yes.
both going. So a second factor, which is clear in your story that you told, is your faith. Your strong faith helped you to overcome problems, helps guide your path today, helps direct you in the path of doing good for society, helping other people. Uh, where does that come from? Were you a regular church goer as a child? Did you go every Sunday?
Well, I'll tell a little bit about my faith because I guess that some people can reach out to me, can say something to me. I I I was born as a Catholic,
Mhm,
so I until I was 35 years old, I continued as a Catholic. I'm still a Catholic, and but what happened is that with the delirium thing, I I had I there was something happened because I was not a good child, actually, to be honest. Until I was 34, I was not a good child. And then the delirium that I had worked with that in some way. And then um, after I overcome the delirium, I went through a phase in which I had no hope in salvation. So I didn't pray. I didn't go to church. And then after my father passed away, I started to pray, and I started praying And with the time, I started praying every day, several times a day. And there is an evangelizer on the internet, which I started following, and I started praying several times a day. Then I started to retake faith in salvation, because I think that some things, for example, because I don't evangelize until this point of my life, I don't evangelize, etc. I think that's I wouldn't have salvation. And so I'm still working on this thing of the faith for salvation, but I pray every day,
Mhm.
and I couldn't have achieved this goal of getting back to NASA if I hadn't prayed, because the pray has been the strength. It was where I found strength to keep moving, to keep going.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's clear that your faith, your prayers, are an integral part of your experience, your overcoming difficulties, and your driving force to move forward. And you mentioned evangelism. I think by creating a video like this, by creating your website, that may be your best path towards evangelism, because people can look and see what your faith causes you to do and how it results in something good and beautiful that is shared with others, and that they may do the same thing if they have the same faith and the same drive to do that. So let's hope that that's true. That may be one path towards evangelism. So the last questions then concern about advice to others. If you find, if others who are watching this are facing difficulties, very serious problems to overcome, perhaps health or financial or family problems, could be many problems, what kind of advice based on your own experience would you give them, how to concentrate, how to focus, how to deal with these problems? How have you found it possible? Because you've achieved something here. You've achieved something from almost nothing. I mean, you have a website, you have videos, you have interviews with famous scientists. That's an achievement. It's an achievement that a person wouldn't guess would happen. What is your advice or guidance to someone who's struggling with big problems in their life?
I I think something that I can share from my experience, something that worked for me, was praying. And I was reading that praying, that even for people who eventually don't believe in God, that if these people start praying, they will reach results. I read this somewhere, and I think it makes sense, because I didn't have hope for salvation. Today I have some hope for salvation, but I do pray. I do pray several times a day,
Mhm.
and from my experience with getting back to NASA and doing this podcasts and working on the website, from my experience, praying can make you change your reality and achieve things, because
Mhm.
after before I had the habit of praying, many bad things happened in my life. Even, for example, going to the street and finding someone to bother me on the streets, some seller, or
Mhm.
some people who bother you on the street. And today I don't have these problems anymore, because I pray, because God takes care of me, because when you connect to God through praying, so it enables God to work on your life. And so the key for my success, and I can say that I, as you said, I have success, because getting back to NASA, developing this work, it is something that a few people have the privilege of do what I have been doing. And uh, I owe a lot of what I've been doing to praying.
I think that's very good advice for others. I think in prayer, there is reflection on what you're doing, why you're doing, what God wants you to do, how you can assist God on earth. And so there's an immense value in prayer. And I see it in the things that you do, on how you carefully consider what the next step would be, about how you're very careful and generous with other people that you interview, that you talk to. And I think it also gives you that connection to God has given you the spirit, the encouragement to keep trying in the face of adversity. It's really admirable what you've achieved here and really exciting to think what's coming next. So, with that statement, I think we'll bring this interview to an end. We
David,
wish, yes, we wish
I
all of
just
the,
David,
yes,
I just
yes,
wanted to add something to what I said.
good.
That when I say praying, it's not for you to say a prayer in the morning and then start your day, and then that's all. When I say that I pray, it's that I talk to God, and for example, in some moments of my day, I I get on my knees and I talk to God as if I was talking to you, having a conversation, and and not only just say a prayer, a brief prayer, a 2 minute prayer, and spend the rest of the day doing your stuff. You have to be connected to God. That's what I do.
Understand. I understand completely. You're establishing a direct connection, articulating how you're feeling, what you want to do, and trying to receive guidance from above on what's the best course of direction. And I think that is part of what is so inspirational here is the careful attention to what God wishes to happen and the attention to fulfilling that here on earth. That's one of the reasons I so enjoy working with you. Um,
And another thing, David, that I forgot to mention was that, would you imagine? I don't know, you who are watching this video, if you are facing a difficulty, what kind of difficulty you may be facing, but would you imagine someone who had been twice to psychiatric hospitals, who wore psychiatric hospital dressing, and they are not nice, and it is not nice to be there. It's not an awful place, but it's not a nice place. It's not nice to spend time there, and um, I had the opportunity to get back to NASA and to visit you, David, at NASA gathered in 2023 last year. So it was such an achievement that I think it's unique in the world, because I know any story like that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know any similar story either. It's a comeback story. We call it a comeback from the depths of problems to great achievements to, as we can see from your videos, talking with international experts about the history of eclipses, real leaders in their field on a one-to-one basis that really serving a public purpose, not just for fun, but teaching an educational purpose. Hopefully interesting for all the viewers of this video. So,
Yeah,
yes,
I I wanted, because I didn't finish I didn't conclude the what I was going to say, because I wanted to say that with my story, with what happened to me, which God allowed me to do, getting back to NASA last year to visit David's, and do a work there, and so activities, and if it happened to me, it can happen to you. What I mean is that if you have a problem, you can win this problem, and with God's help, you will win this problem. It doesn't matter what problem it is, it doesn't matter how big it is. With faith and with praying, with God's hands, you can do anything. And at this moment, if you say, "Oh, Norma doesn't have any problems at the moment," it's not true. I have problems. For example, I've been under a treatment because I've been having obsessive thoughts, and I'm struggling with that, and I'm doing a treatment. But it doesn't stop me from doing what I do. But it means that I may still be struggling with something, but I'm keep on doing my activities, and it doesn't matter if you are facing something, you can overcome something. And even if your life's not perfect, I would say that almost anyone's life is perfect. We always be struggling with something, but the important thing is that you never stop and that you never give up.
exactly. I think that's the main message. We all have our problems, we all have difficulties, but there's only one path to success, and that is to struggle, to keep trying, to find partners, people to work with, to work for the better good of everyone. It gives a good feeling at the end of the day, each time we've done something good that helps other people.
Uh, I know this interview is about my story, but I also would like to ask you, perhaps as a final question, um, how how it was for you to work with me at NASA Gathering last year, David.
Your visit was a wonderful visit because we had a chance to host you, to talk about eclipses, to think and plan out what interviews we would do, what texts we would do, to edit them, to strategize for the future. So hosting you was a pleasure to take you around NASA, to take a lot of pictures with you. I discovered you like photographs, and so I hope you've got a lot right now. And to let you get to know our area of Washington, D.C. and its environment. So it was a wonderful experience having you come.
Thank you, David. I'm
Yeah.
happy to know this.
Yes, it was a pleasure. You're a good person.
You too.
I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for this interview. Um, I think Norma has spoken honestly about her greatest joys and her greatest difficulties in her life. It's not easy to speak so openly, neither about joys or difficulties, but she's done it because she wants to let other people know that difficulties can be overcome. The starting point is to have faith, faith in yourself, faith in God, and the other part is to have some objective in life, something that you want to achieve, some goal. Could be small, could be big. In Norma's case, it's to understand solar eclipses, the history of solar eclipses, and to share that interest in solar eclipses with everyone, the general public, but in particular students, young people, that it would inspire them to conduct their own studies, studies of anything, of art, history, music, science. All of these could be inspired by the web pages she's developing and the interviews she's taking. Everyone she interviews was once a young person who didn't know their path in life and had to think about it. And they've all done remarkably well in the history of eclipses, but also in conducting science. Many, many different directions they've gone. It's my hope that those watching these interviews will see and find a path forward, a path that relies on their inner strengths, that is good for all that they come in contact, that benefits society. Will see the example that Norma has set and choose to follow that same direction themselves, to do good for others, to learn about this beautiful world that God has created, this beautiful universe, eclipses, whatever interests you in and around you, and to share that information and to work with others to make good things happen. Thank you all for joining today.